Hello, this is the Wednesday night hop technical track, September 2018, week 3. I'm Brian.
I'm Heather.
This week we did a deep dive into frame
Yep.
using what we call the objects in space game.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, there's two ways you can move an object in space, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can either push linearly, or you can apply rotation. And in both cases, any movement that I create, I have to stop. Yes?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so we talked about being honest about the movement and maintaining your speed or momentum, if you like, whichever word works better for you. So I'm going to continue moving until I am actually made to stop, and being really honest about what it takes to stop me. You know, if I'm moving faster, it takes a lot more energy to stop me, just like a fast-moving car kind of thing. But if I'm moving very slowly, it might not take very much.
Yep. So then we played with that with different levels of tension in our arms. So we started off totally loose,
Totally overcooked spaghetti noodle loose, and
which had some effects like needing to really pull.
yeah, really pulling around, and everything there was very little control over anything, and the movement was very, very large. So we were playing around. Everybody got a chance to play with that. Then we cranked it up to 11, and we're solid as a rock, and tried doing the same movement game, but with, oh lordy, the solid as a rock frame. Sorry, stop you. As part of the game, we talked about what we liked from each of these, what we didn't like from each of these, and then we reapplied it back to the slightly less conceptual world, back onto the swing out and the bounce.
Yes. So a really loose swing out looks something like this.
Yeah, and there's very little control. You're not getting around on 3 at all. The follower ends up getting cranked around a lot, and the lead has very little control.
So a very tight swing out.
Then the super locked down is extremely small, and oh my goodness, here we go. Yeah, very whippy, very responsive, and rather exhausting. And so from there we said, what if there's something in the middle? If we can find a happy medium? So we talked about what muscles that we actually use to create the frame. So we talked about we use the muscles back here to help hold, but primarily it's if you sort of take a deep breath very suddenly, and you have this set of muscles that goes around from the back to the front as like a corset, and the top of that should really be creating most of your frame. It's those muscles that are actually getting tense to create that, and that prevents my shoulder from going somewhere that would be damaging to me. So those are the things that I think about in terms of the muscles of my frame. And then what we want in terms of energy in the arm is something that is reasonably firm but springy, is the phrase I'm going to use. Sort of maybe like a bouncy ball, something that has a little bit of give so that we can actually create compression in a comfortable way, but also doesn't completely give like the overcooked spaghetti noodle.
Yep. And then we talked about using that compression in that frame in the swing out to help the followers get around on 3.
So that somewhere in between happy medium looks like that. From another angle, we talked about the follow actually pivoting around this hand on 3, so not just moving through, but the reason I know to turn is I'm getting compression here, and the lead is compressing and deflecting around so that I actually pivot. If you were to simply compress, you would get something that looks a lot more like the sugar push rather than the deflection and the pivot. And I know to pivot because my frame is nice and engaged and springy.
Yep. We talked about generally trying to match the level of tension that your partner has, because that will create a more comfortable dance for both of you.
Yep, and this should hopefully enable you to not only have a foundation of language for dancing based in physics, this is just one form, but then also allowing you to express yourself a little bit more individually.
So, hope you had fun. See you next week.